Welcome to Nutanix Live, our premiere episode. I'm Angelo, Community Manager at Nutanix, and today I'll be talking to Wendy Pfeiffer, Nutanix CIO, who, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't miss any of it, has been named one of Enterprise Management's 360's top 10 CIOs, a Silicon Valley woman of influence, and one of the top 50 women in technology according to the California Diversity Council, and we're just scratching the surface. We managed to get a few minutes of her time before she went off to help build her husband's recording studio, and we'll get to that at the end, to get answers to some of the most pressing questions on the work from home experience the majority of us find ourselves in. Welcome to our first episode, Wendy.
Hey, Angelo, it's nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me. I love the idea of this new forum, and I'm happy to be the first.
Great. You wrote an article titled, "What Can Happen to a Company If Coronavirus Sends Every Employee Home" for CNBC, and I thought you could expand on some of the insights from that article. You mentioned employees are 38% more likely to be productive if they're engaged. What does it mean to be engaged, and what kinds of projects and programs can an organization develop to engage their employees?
I think the biggest worry that I recall us talking about before folks headed out to work from home was this concern that if people were all working from home, how could they be productive? How could they be, how can we watch them? How can we know what they're working on? And the challenge is that it's very hard to manage productivity. And we think that engagement has something to do with that the way that employees are interested in what they're working on, that they feel that they have some sort of a stake in that's something that then keeps them motivated to work, to stay productive, et cetera. Well, how do you engage folks when they are all remote? What we have to work on is our leadership, our management, our interpersonal skills, and we have our tools and technologies. And having the right interaction design within those tools and technologies, having tools that people want to connect to and forums that they want to be a part of and that support and enable collaboration, well, that's a part of it. The other part of it is trying to find ways to connect as human beings and having respect for that interconnection as human beings. Ultimately, it is isolating and sad and sort of disengaging and boring when we're disconnected, when there's that screen, that wall between us. But if we can find ways, even with the technology and with our own vulnerability to break through that, then that is truly engaging. That's truly a way of connecting. But man, how do we maintain that? So many of us have been on these endless Zoom calls all day long. It's just hard to maintain the energy sometimes, and then also hard to be productive and consistently productive, even as we are connected. There are, I think, only so many more virtual, Zoom happy hour things that I can do with my team before that ceases to be the novelty that it started out as. So it's a challenge for us, but the more that the technology is invisible, the more that the technology supports us and then enables us, and the more that we are able to connect as humans, that helps. It also helps for me that I'm in IT, and I believe that the work that we're doing is important. We are truly the folks who are enabling companies to allow folks to work remotely so that others who need to be physically in offices have the opportunity to do so, and we keep the virus hopefully at bay.
Yeah, and to touch on that, how does our at-home technology help the work from home experience? What are some of the pitfalls to productivity from a technology standpoint? How should organizations change and get ready to reopen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's never been anything magic about technology, right? Technology can't create competence. Technology can't create connectedness. At best, it magnifies those things. It enables those things. And so as we think about our at-home technologies, what I'm aware of is that sitting here in my home, I am surrounded by what was 5 minutes ago consumer technology. I have my smartphone here, and my smartphone has been created in a way that encourages me to use it. It's simple. I don't have to have the 5-minute video snippets to understand how to use the apps on it. It allows me to, recognizes me, and I'm sitting here in a room where I've got my gaming computer and my work computer. I'm on a public network. All of those things are consumer technologies, and these enterprise technologies are running right alongside those. And the comparison of the two, internet, public internet, consumer technologies, and enterprise technologies side by side, in many cases, the enterprise technologies, frankly, don't hold up very well. They're not very engaging. And more importantly, they take an unfair share of things like scarce bandwidth. Their interaction designs are not as cool, not as obvious as some of the consumer technology. And so the at-home technology, first of all, it forces us to improve the quality of the interaction that we normally are used to with our enterprise technology. And then secondly, it allows us to have some optionality. This is a big deal. On my mobile phone, I have a number of mail applications. I have Gmail, I have Yahoo Mail, I have Microsoft Exchange Mail, and I use those mail applications somewhat interchangeably. There's no drama there. I know which one to use for which kind of communication. Something similar with my social connection applications. I've got a Facebook and a Twitter and an Instagram and a Snapchat and all of those things. And so those are all sort of playing well together. No challenge there. The platform, the mobile device just makes that work. It makes the technical infrastructure invisible. And that's something that we need to have with enterprise technology as well. We need to have the infrastructure that's making this run invisible. We need the infrastructure to do all the magic things, right? To scale, to be secure, to be performant, to perform across multiple clouds. But at the same time, that infrastructure needs to not be in the way. It needs to not be complex. And so that's a challenge for us. That's truly a challenge for us.
And with the enormous number of workers staying home, what kind of strain is that creating for IT systems? And further, how can IT support a future that understandably may not want to return to the office?
Yeah, those are two big questions there. So, first of all, one of the big things that's happening with IT systems is we do have some strain just in terms of the performance of our applications. So, for example, at Nutanix, we enabled all of our remote employees to use a VDI product called Frame. And what Frame does is it sort of compensates for some of the vagaries of public internet. It compensates for some of the challenges we might have with security of personal or home devices. And it allows us to give really performant connections to network at a time when network is, especially public internet, is really under some strain. And so I think we need to have applications that sort of are aware of and tools and systems that are aware of the ecosystem in which they're playing, this public ecosystem that is strained in terms of bandwidth. I also call this the death by 1,000 cuts phase of our recovery period from the coronavirus, because there are so many little things that we need to adjust and fix and make better, so many apps, so many tools and systems. And there's a lot of pressure on us in IT to make everything work well and to kind of get rid of those distractions and those frustrations. And as time drags on, those little things that were bothering folks before become bigger and bigger and more performant. And so, there's just some of this, emotional strain and strain in terms of keeping focus, and then this scale out and optionality strain. Now, at the same time, we're hearing a really interesting thing, and I'm experiencing it for myself, especially for folks who work in the large population centers, getting to work. Getting to work in New York or San Francisco or some of the major cities internationally is a sport all by itself. There are epic commutes that people are encountering. People are having to leave for work at times that are bad for their families. There are folks like myself. I spend about 20 hours a week commuting, and so in that situation, that's 20 hours a week I'm not going to get back in my life. Yeah, I'm not spending time with my kids or having breakfast or dinner with my family. And so there's some real advantages if you can work from home to do that. I mean, I've got 20 more hours a week just by doing that. And then also there's some positions where it really makes sense. We can concentrate better. We can focus better. And so that's pretty exciting, right? That we're proving this grand potential experiment is turning out to show that there are a great number of people who prefer to work from home. Now, there are others we're learning who do not. And so what this is really pushing on is the fact that in order to be productive, in order to be engaged, different employees need different things. Different human beings need different things. They need optionality. And we need to be able to operate in this hybrid mode going forward. The new normal is everything. It's a little bit of everything. Even as we start to return to our offices, maybe months from now, a little bit sooner in some countries, as we start to return to our offices, not everyone can return at the same time due to social distancing. So what are we going to do about that? Well, one of the biggest things that we need to do for that is to understand that we're going to have to create a beautiful, performant, consummate experience for the employee who may never return to the office, and a beautiful, performant, excellent experience for the employee who will return to the office and has had the experience of working in the consumer space, and a great experience for those who are forever going to be in a new mix, several days at home or a week at home, a week in the office, and toggling back and forth as conditions change, as requirements change. So this is an opportunity for IT to rise to the occasion. And it's also an opportunity for us to, while we offer optionality, offer simplicity as well. We really need to have less friction in terms of how we get our work done, because we have so much friction otherwise. The last piece about this also is there's a potential revolution, I think, in our access to talent that's happening right now. We have these centers of technology, for example, where some of the best and brightest technologists live and work, and these tend to be expensive places to live. They tend to have the big commutes and all of those things that we've talked about. Now, if we can get access to technology workers who can work from anywhere, well, then technology workers could live anywhere they chose to live. Companies could set up smaller bases of operations, wherever it makes sense financially. There's a true revolution and a true shift that the technology is enabling, and that employees' willingness to embrace this technology and figure out how to make it work is enabling. And having this everything from that hybrid layer of cloud to that hybrid layer of consumer and enterprise technology to that hybrid layer of where we work and when and how we work. It's a hybrid world. That's the world that we're in. And so now it's the moment for us, especially in IT, especially as technologists, not to put up with that, not to have a disaster plan that deals with that, but to architect for that, to create an environment where we thrive, to create an environment where people have the access they need, they have the optionality they need, they have the environments that they need. And at the same time, as all the craziness and the difficulty that's happening with this pandemic continues to play out, that as people have to change things up, maybe go into the office for a while but end up working at home, or care for children, or care for older folks. As we're in the midst of doing those things, we should always be supported in our ability to be productive and engaged by our companies at all of those hybrid layers.
Great. How can IT prepare for a greater influx of at-home workers in the future? And maybe share what's maybe 3 to 5 of your must-haves business should have in place for what-if scenarios.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is, first of all, to get ourselves right. As leaders, it is so very important for us to understand this new world that we're a part of, and to understand the planning scenarios that we're dealing with. We're talking about 6 months to a year to 18 months of a sustained influx of remote workers. And so we can no longer treat this like a sprint. At a minimum, it's a marathon, but it's more than just a marathon, because it's multiple sports. It's more like a triathlon, right? There's so many different sort of sports involved in this thing that we have to be good at. So we've got to train. We've got to get ourselves ready. We've got to sort of take care of ourselves. And then secondly, there's just some simple things. The first, we need to have documented written processes. We've been saying internally at Nutanix that we need to put things in writing. Having undocumented processes, having things that aren't in writing but are just known by a few, especially a few at headquarters, well, that's been a challenge for global companies for some time. And so now is our opportunity to overcome that challenge. We need to document what it means to optimally work and optimally deliver the services that we have. The second thing is we need to measure. We need to understand the most important ways to measure employee engagement, employee productivity, our relationship with our external customers, the quality of our products. We need to be constantly measuring those things and look at those measurements often to understand how some of the big changes, like everyone working remotely, or smaller changes like perhaps one team returning to the office or a key player changing the mode in which they work, how that affects productivity. And having those measurements in place is pretty important, I think. And then looking at them often, that's the next thing. And finally, I believe that it's time to focus people on, in our IT teams, in our technology teams, in our companies, we need to focus people on doing the work that they are good at doing, that they have the strength and the capability to do, and also that they have the capacity to do in this new mode. We were talking about this earlier in one of my staff meetings. We were looking at a team of remote support people that we have who are spending 10 hours a day on the phone in their home office answering support calls. And that's typical. That was their job in an office. But in the office, they had a lot of tools around them that sort of made that possible. At home, they might be in a small apartment with a spouse and some small children running around, and they can't really sit there and stare at the computer with the headphones on for 10 or 12 hours. What do we do about that? Do we just assume they're going to be less productive? Or maybe do we change up their job description a little bit and add some other tasks, some hands-on work that they can do to balance things out and distribute some of their work to others in the organization. So thinking creatively about that and changing up the nature of our work, our job descriptions, and who does what, and having that optionality and that flexibility really matters. Lastly, cybersecurity is huge. We have just vastly expanded the attack surface, if you will, and there's some bad guys and gals out there who are really, pushing on all of our defenses. And so we need to monitor. We need to understand what normal and current state is. Need to educate our employees and our people as to how to have good hygiene and how to have good security posture, even in their own homes, even on personal devices. And so, all of those things, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a challenge. And so back to that first point of strengthening ourselves, taking a break, understanding that as we prepare for this race, as we take care of ourselves, we're not just preparing for a sprint, we're not just preparing for a marathon, but we're preparing for sustained, excellent performance across multiple disciplines that remote work and hybrid work both enable and also challenge us with.
Great. And finally, on a personal note, a lot of folks are going to music to help them through these challenging times. And I know you've taken that up a notch or a level as you're building a recording studio at home. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Absolutely. Well, I'm married to a musician, and whenever I say that, and not just a guy who makes music, but that's how he earns his living. And he's a composer. In fact, he just released an album right during the midst of the pandemic. It's called Aqua. His name is Jay Wayne, so check it out. But we needed to have a place where he could record and he could bring in other artists and produce and so on. And so, we decided to do that now. And I can tell you that we have a lot of dust. It's been hard to find, and in many cases have not been able to find contractors. So he's ended up doing a lot of that work himself. And there's a lot of noise, but ultimately we have this hopefully big, beautiful space that used to be our basement that will be soundproof, and we'll be making some music in this space. Oh, look, there's a photo of it. He's done most of that work himself. It is going to be fantastic when it's done. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll have a conversation and we can broadcast from the studio, which will have all of the cool mics and lighting and soundproofing and acoustics that you probably wish we had this time. So it kind of keeps us sane. Maybe it's driving us crazy too, who knows, but it's just an exciting time, and it's a time of creativity. And I love to support his creativity as well, and hopefully, bring some music to folks who just need a little something to either deal with the monotony or to lighten their mood a little bit.
Great. That's a cool project. Can't wait to see it finished. Thank you for taking the time today to chat, Wendy. Appreciate the insights.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Great. Thank you, folks, for watching, and stay tuned for the next Nutanix Live.